The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or beliefs of Marshall University, Marshall University Libraries, the Department of English, the College of Liberal Arts, Marshall University Film Studies, or HerdCon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Giant Bombs, exploring cinema through famous box office flops. I'm Cody Lumpkin, and always with me is my friend and colleague at Marshall University, Ian Nolte. Hello, Ian.
Hi, how's it going?
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I decided to look at the cameras this time.
All right, yeah, just break that fourth wall.
Yeah.
And we have a special guest with us today, Harrison McGinnis.
Hi.
Hi, Harrison. Harrison is a teacher, writer, and filmmaker living and working in West Virginia, and he works with us at Marshall in the Department of English, teaching composition and film courses. And not to... I first met Harrison when we were working on a film together that we separately auditioned for, where I played his father, which I think is kind of ridiculous. And I remember it was called Words. It was by Brennan Smith. It was his senior capstone project. And I if I'm recalling correctly, that is the thing that led you to being in a lot of local films after that, because everyone liked you. And I was like, yeah, this guy's got talent. Let me get out of his way. And you've gone on to make it's like, I feel like you've been in what, 30 short films and projects at this point.
It's a lot. Yeah. And that was the first one. And I liked it so much that I was like, any of these film students, if you're looking for someone to cast in your movies, I am available.
You'll do lead stuff. You'll do supporting. You'll just be there. You enjoyed it so much. And you've written and directed a film called Doors Open.
Doors Unlocked.
Doors Unlocked,
Yeah.
which is a very fun one. Can you find that one online?
Yes. That is on my YouTube channel, which I think is just at TV Smashing. So that one is available. Online.
Yeah. When I saw that, I thought this is a metaphorical comment on how many people want you to be in their films, and that you're working all the time, and the phone's ringing off the hook. So, anyway, we are all here today to talk about one of our not necessarily a legendary film flop, but it definitely underperformed and didn't make its money back. And we're talking about 1981's Blowout, written and directed by Brian De Palma, starring John Travolta, Nancy Allen, and Dennis Franz, and John Lithgow. A brief summary of this film from IMDb. A movie sound recordist accidentally records the evidence that proves that a car accident was actually a murder, and consequently finds himself in danger. So we'll start with you, Harrison. This was one of the ones. We have a big list of films, and you picked this. You could have picked whatever you wanted, but I was kind of interested in why you're interested in talking about this film.
Yeah. Well, I got that list from you, and I was actually planning to and did teach this film in English 344 this week. So I was like, that's kismet. Let's go with that.
Anything to combine work.
Yeah,
work
right.
together.
But I like this film a lot. I also taught the conversation in that class too, and so we had a conversation about the differences and similarities, and I'm sure that will come up at some point in this episode. I think my first De Palma was Mission Impossible, but that was more of like watching the Mission Impossible movies. It was not seeking out De Palma per se. And then several years ago, I watched Carrie because I had never seen Carrie. It was just like a gap in my filmography. And so I watched that and was... I loved it, and I loved what De Palma was doing with the split screens. And so I started to seek out more. And so I think from then I went to Dress to Kill, and then Blowout, and then most recently Sisters. But Blowout I've thought about it the past couple of years now since I watched it.
That's really interesting to me, because I was really curious about this idea, because I know probably no one can tell by looking, because I am so handsome and have a youthful charisma. You were much younger than me. And I was curious about, do young people even like De Palma? I remember, like, when I was like in high school, De Palma was still one of the guys. And I remember excitedly going to see like Snake Eyes when I was in high school because it was a new De Palma movie, and he was among those movie brats and was still like a notable director to me. Like I think recently he had like Carlito's Way, which seemed like a big movie for the year it came out to me. But now by now I think that De Palma has really like fallen off a director you must seek out, like pop cultural zeitgeist. And I was curious if young people were interested in De Palma. And you were teaching this class this week to much younger people, like college undergraduates. How do they react to De Palma?
Yeah, I suspect that you're kind of right in thinking that maybe people don't seek out De Palma in the way that they used to. We talked a little bit about auteur theory this week as well, and I asked if anyone had ever seen any other De Palma movies, and I mentioned that he also directed Carrie, and there were lots of kind of the realization dawning.
I think he is a director. You are right. You realize when you say, "Oh yeah, I saw Carrie. I saw Mission Impossible.
Yes,
like I know these movies."
Yeah. But I don't know if it to that point. It's like those are they kind of rise to like the top of this like bobbing along the surface like pop culture moments of Carrie, Mission Impossible. I don't know that people are seeking him out in that way. Yeah,
I was looking back. This movie was interesting to me for this reason: is it had been a while since I had thought critically about like De Palma and the trajectory of his career, and he was definitively ranked among like the movie brats. That's Coppola, Lucas, Spielberg, Scorsese, and De Palma. This was the group of five, and there were a couple of screenwriters. Gets right sometimes, and if you keep making this long enough, it gets to William Friedkin. But these were the five premier new American cinema filmmakers of their generation. And I think now, if you start to list them, perhaps De Palma escapes that, like the gravity of that. And I was thinking back to this moment, like in the Oscars back in 2007. I remember watching Coppola, Lucas, and Spielberg as three directors come out to honor Scorsese, who was like winning Best Director that year for The Departed. And I remember like De Palma gets kind of left out of that moment, sort of. And I remember at one point in the Oscars watching Coppola, Lucas, and Steven Spielberg at least presented themselves as, it's us. We're the three buddies that make movies. And I'm like, well, I feel like De Palma by 2007 was starting to drift away from that. And looking back at his filmography, I was trying to figure out why or when or where that might have happened. I know The Bonfire of the Vanities in 1990 was like a famous film flop, but it did follow like The Untouchables, which was a tremendous box office sensation. And not too long after that, like Carlito's Way was a big comeback movie, I think maybe. Mission Impossible was a monstrous movie. I think people didn't like Snake Eyes, but whatever. And then his most recent movie was from 2019, a film called Domino, which in the United States of America went direct to video on demand, which I thought was like such a curious outcome for this guy who should be mentioned like in the same breath as Francis Ford Coppola, but isn't.
I haven't seen Domino, but I've seen video essays talking about De Palma, and these are from people who are like, oh, they're not like people. These are like 30 and 40-year-olds talking about De Palma's filmography. Is there like there's no De Palma in something like Domino? It just seems like a paycheck job. Where I think there are clearly De Palma films that are De Palma films that are like he goes full De Palma. And then there are ones, I think about like The Untouchables, Mission Impossible, where he gets like they want De Palma, but they don't want him to go full. They want De Palma, like Tom Cruise is like, I want De Palma to do his De Palma thing in my Mission Impossible movie. And that was kind of the trademark of Mission Impossible films, is these auteur directors do their thing. And so there's kind of like two kinds of De Palma films. And he mentions it in the documentary about De Palma called De Palma. Talks about, if I get hired to do somebody's film, I'll try my best to give them what they want, kind of thing. So he's not one that like, I mean, I think his style is very distinctive. It's sleazy. It's obsessed with Hitchcock. I think the other guys, they all have made films that are PG or PG rated at some point, even Scorsese.
Hugo.
Yeah, and De Palma pretty much only makes R-rated movies or like hard PG-13 movies. The man can't make he would never make a film that would pass the Hollywood production code back in the day. He's too horny and he's too much of a pervert.
Yeah, I wonder kind of about that. Do young people like De Palma question? Is the sleaze and the perversion, is that kind of what pits the Zoomers away from De Palma in that sense? Kind of a newfound like Protestant, like I don't know.
But at the same time, we are right now sitting on the campus of university, and I think if we walked over to the dorms, we could find on every floor a Scarface poster. I still believe in my heart that is the case of college freshmen. But that doesn't seem to me to translate to this great, this great continual love and appreciation of De Palma the way, like you see with Spielberg or even Lucas, who like basically stopped making movies at a certain point.
Ago.
Quite a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And there were like 3 he didn't want to make, but nobody would direct them, so he made them. And okay, we got what we asked for. But yeah, he is, he kind of deals in like thrillers and conspiracy stuff and salacious things. And I think there's just, I think for teen viewers, except maybe for Carrie is his teen film, but like that's a very dark teen film that we're talking about.
That is true. Carrie is a movie that hangs around. People still like and appreciate Carrie. I just don't know why that name doesn't ring out, De Palma. It feels like it should more.
Yeah. And there's so much that is, distinctive within that film, just like his aversion to coverage and his just unique way of then like covering a scene that you would think, would kind of, I don't know, push anyone who is interested in film, out of the movie Carrie and into more of his filmography, his distinctive style.
I think maybe that's like probably contemporary studios want you to have a lot of coverage so they can put it all together in the edit, where he very much there's a lot of these kind of Spielberg oneers. They're not like super long, absurd tracking shots, but they're like, here's a minute and a half. It starts with a close up and then it goes from here. And these are tracking shots that have a beginning, a middle, and the end. Spielberg was really good at this. De Palma was really good at this, but it's like, it's kind of like and Hitchcock did this too. It was like he had a jigsaw puzzle and it only goes together one way because he has a strong sense of storyboarding and what to put in a film and what order to put it in, where the studio execs are like, we can't change it because you've done it this way. And so much of it now, even with like special effects and green screen, is just like, let's just change the background because the test audience didn't like the background or something like that. So it's just, he is someone that has a vision and, let him do his thing, which nowadays is like, you just get it and then we'll figure it out later kind of thing. Because shooting a day costs money. So,
yeah. And like we said, this movie was unsuccessful at the box office, which is the theme of our discussions. And in my mind and heart, for some reason, I always believed that this movie had gotten like really bad reviews or something, and then like got critically discovered later. Like it took filmmakers who came after De Palma to say, what's a really great movie is Blowout. But when I looked into it, it got really great reviews, at least from like the primary review sources that drive like ticket movies. Like Siskel and Ebert were high on this movie, like when it came out, and then in review, like at the end of the year, they're like, this is one of the better movies of the year. I think Pauline Kael wrote a big influential piece about what a great movie this was and what a great director De Palma was. So I couldn't figure out where the disconnect happened with audiences, because also then I was like a little bit in my mind, I was like, well, maybe this was kind of like when John Travolta was starting in a downward trajectory. Maybe the audiences rejected the star, but no, this was like peak Travolta. This was right before Saturday Night Fever. Like it was right as he was like becoming John.
Was it after?
Oh, was it after?
Yeah.
Just after. Just after. Right as he was becoming John Travolta, the movie star. So he had the right star and a movie that was well regarded. And it came out, I was like, maybe it came out like the same weekend as E.T. or something. I don't know. But it looked out, it opened against like a horror movie I'd never heard of and another thriller I'd never heard of. So it was like, even had like, I think the right thriller for the right weekend. I guess it was the same summer as Raiders of the Lost Ark, Superman 2, and Stripes, which were movies that were eating a lot of tickets. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark was gobbling up every ticket by a young person in America, I think, that summer. Similar to like Superman and Stripes. I don't know, like maybe it just got outcompeted. It is also like comparing it maybe to Raiders of the Lost Ark, Superman 2, and Stripes. It is a bleak movie. It's a thriller, and it has a downbeat ending that actually really like shocked me. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, it's awful cruel. There's a great interview with Noah Baumbach and De Palma that I believe is included in the Criterion release of Blowout. And it's towards the end of it. It's an hour-long interview, and Baumbach kind of asks the leading question, like, do you think the box office performance is related to that like downbeat ending? And De Palma's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just like the kind of pessimism of the ending and just like, bleak.
Was 81 Blade Runner 2?
That was 80. That was the magical summer of 1982.
82 Blade Runner. That seems like audiences were also rejecting that pessimistic, like
Blade Runner, the
bleakness. Yeah, was a thing on them?
Yeah, same. It was the same
Oh my
summer,
God.
82. Yeah, all these great films.
They were all. And the American moviegoer of the 80s was, I guess, wrong. I guess just wrong.
Yeah, I have some thoughts. So, by the way, Wolfen is a werewolf story with Albert Finney and Gregory Hines in it, of all people. And actually, the production designer of Wolfen is the production designer of Blowout, Paul Silbert. Very much has this kind of like gritty. Wolfen is shot in New York. It's this very gritty, grimy kind of like Albert Finney is a very rumpled alcoholic detective. So it's just all just kind of crappy. And then very much this is pre-urban renewal Philadelphia, pre-urban renewal New York. And I think that kind of not too shiny look to the film. And yeah, I think this was kind of one of the last films of the 70s that got into the 80s, the paranoid conspiracy thriller with the bummer ending.
I think I think you are correct in that way too. Is this very much feels like a 70s movie to me, when I think maybe by 1981 they were turning the corner into that kind of like mega blockbuster popcorn film like Stripes, Superman 2, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, that maybe this was a movie just out of step, like 5 years too late to really capture the audience that was viewing like Taxi Driver and things like that.
Yeah. And Travolta, big hits, Grease, Saturday Night Fever. Those were huge successes. He did Urban Cowboy, which was let's make John Travolta a cowboy. That was a moderate success. And then we get to a year later with Blowout, and it is a failure. So, it's the film that I think Travolta gives one of his best performances, but it's also like he goes to like he does the Staying Alive. He does the Staying Alive sequel. Which wasn't successful. He does a sequel. He does some movie with Olivia Newton-John. He does Perfect, where he's an aerobics instructor. So he was kind of on a downward trajectory. And this kind of film was like he was this huge bankable star at that time. His films had all been successes. And then this was kind of down and down until Pulp Fiction. There was the Look Who's Talking. That was a little bump. And then there was Pulp Fiction when he was really back, thanks to obviously Quentin Tarantino's love of Travolta. And, one of the things I first was aware of it when Tarantino talked about it and how much he loved the film. And there was a time in the world, folks, in the 90s where Quentin Tarantino was this huge success from Pulp Fiction, and people just have him on just to talk about movies. And to his credit, I think on the whole, Tarantino has just spread love about films that he loves and is overlooked, and actors, and he's been a force for good. Not so much when he craps on actors who are just trying to get through the day and get paid and do their job. But
Tarantino has always been a brat who says really annoying things.
Yeah.
And we used to like that about him.
Yeah, we loved him.
Right.
On the whole, I think he says a lot of very, very bright intelligence and sharp things, and his love of movies comes through.
He does have a special affection for this movie. I remember just recently listening to an interview with Tarantino talking about this movie particularly, and talking about De Palma especially as something he was really influenced from. So that was really on my mind when I was watching this movie. And I was thinking about it because, like, De Palma, the I think the view on De Palma is that he is obsessed with Hitchcock, which you said
Yeah.
just moments ago. I think I saw a lot of Orson Welles in this movie, like the way,
Mm.
like that presentational style and that like just like escalated everything of Orson Welles in this movie. But I was thinking about like what's the like, but Tarantino they don't feel like Hitchcock movies to me. And I was thinking like in this movie in particular, like I always thought Hitchcock had this very tight, like you say, like very mannered, like every closed frame approach where all the frames fit together like a jigsaw puzzle in this one particular way, but they're also telling a really tight story. In this movie, I was thinking that it has this very closed frame where every like shot is super storyboarded to perfection, but almost as if the screenplay is like oh yeah, there is a story, yes, but I'm mostly thinking about where I'm going to set up this dioptic shot between the staircase and the thing, and like what they're talking about can be boring or uninteresting, or even like muddled or confusing or presented in the wrong order. As long as like the shots are slick, six shots. And then I was thinking, oh, maybe that's true. Like Tarantino's an evolution beyond Hitchcock, because Tarantino also is like always down on Hitchcock. He always says he thinks Hitchcock's films like fall apart at the end, like he always says. And Tarantino's movies are much more like these mixtapes of cool sequences, where it's like a bunch of cool sequences strung together rather than like a really tight, measured, controlled story. And I wonder if that's just like the evolution where it's like Hitchcock is I'm in control of everything, like, and it's all in service of this tight story in which I have this dominant hand.
He is the master. Yeah.
And De Palma is like I am in control of the camera and the edit, and the story is what I brought. And then Tarantino, who is like, it's a bunch of cool stuff, and it's kind of chopped together into something that feels like a story.
So De Palma's like the missing link.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
the great connective tissue.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think I'm compelled by the narrative, but I also think that this is also like a satire. Very much right from the get-go, we have this if you love slasher films, you'll either love or hate the opening scene of the killer, and he's very perverted, stalking outside the sorority house, and there's a cop who's a peeping Tom, and then the slasher kills the cop and just goes in and just sees just the most absurd sorority house ever.
It was, I think, just a brilliant parody of those 80s slashers, and also like a perfect execution of one.
Yeah.
If that was the opening scene from a real 80s slasher, it would be one of my favorites. Like it's so
Absolutely.
And it is just De Palma like on the dirt bike full throttle being like, yeah, if I made a driller killer movie, it would be awesome.
Yeah. It's like I can do better than you, and I can make fun of you at the same time.
Yeah. Just really doing donuts in the parking lot.
We're talking like Halloween was like 78. So 3 years later, what was innovative is now it's now parody. So how quickly the world turns away from these kind of tricks and stylistic moves.
So I don't know. Can we talk about the ending real quick?
Oh, I don't know. We can go whatever order we
Because
want.
the opening of the movie is that they're working on a horror movie and they can't get the scream right. So the opening sequence is this long, like it's actually I think like 2 long tracking shots from the killer's perspective, moving through the sorority house, leading up to a stabbing in the shower. And the girl that's getting stabbed does a bad job scream. That's like the story of the first scene.
There's actually no stabbing. He just puts the knife in front of the camera until she notices, and she does that ridiculous scream. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the whole rest of the movie plays out with John Travolta doing the big mystery, falling in love with Nancy Allen, and the end of the film, he was rushing to save her, but he's too late. She dies. She's murdered by Jonathan Lithgow. But because she was wiretapped, he has a recording of her final moments, which he listens to. As one of the most uncomfortable scenes I've ever seen is he listens to her murder after the fact in his headphones. And then in the final scene of the movie, he puts her scream into the horror movie, making it the perfect scream to open his slasher movie. And then he cries at the screen while the scene plays.
He's like holding his ears so he can't hear it. Yeah.
It is brilliant. And way too much.
I think you said it was sick, which it is.
It was sick. weird.
Yeah.
I thought the idea of it was I was not an idea I could ever arrive at. Even like watching the movie, I was like, I don't know how you get at that idea. Like how you are like, I know how to end this movie.
Right.
And then I could see why audiences were turned off by it. But I think it is an ending where if you're just on board if you're on the wavelength of the movie, you're like, that's sick. That's crazy.
And if you listen to the opening, when the opening title comes up, you can hear Nancy Allen scream.
Oh.
So it's that classic. We show the title or the pre-title sequence, and we actually give the movie away. You can hear her or whoever scream is that, because we don't know if it is actually Nancy Allen's. It sounds a lot like her, but it's the scream that ends the film, is the scream that kind of opens the film after the.
Yeah.
And a movie that is, and also that's the end of the movie in a movie that is almost entirely about sound design.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was an interesting like premise for a movie. I felt the movie suffered from the fact that it is so very similar to Coppola's The Conversation, but just inferior in every aspect. That was kind of bothered me. I was like, oh, I don't know that if I'd seen The Conversation, I would have written this story quite this way.
Yeah. To your point, I guess, about the screen being in step with, or if you're in step with how the movie is moving, it is about as cynical a move as like the portrait that he's trying to paint about America at the time. I mean, it's like, what? How do you?
It's the saddest
Yeah.
thing to me, and I think quite funny how sad it is. This character situation at the end where he's fallen in love, and the only way he can represent her is with her literal death rattle in his shitty movie.
Yeah.
I should have said that.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was like a sad. I thought that was a sad. Just like, I can see why audiences were like turned off by that in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an ending that it might need to worm around for a few decades, collecting its audience very slowly.
Right.
Yeah. There's some. Oh, also, like, you're right about like the way the movie portrays media and the way we use images and sounds to create stories. Because I thought that was another like layer of complication. It was very interesting the way Nancy Allen's death in the news media is reported incorrectly. Her death is fictionalized in the news media, and then in the awful Stabby movie, her literal death, is immortalized in the drive-in slasher movie from the B Picture movie studio in Philadelphia.
Co-ed Frenzy was, I believe, the title they were working on. That was their 5th film together.
My favorite one of that movie from the production studios, they have a movie poster for a movie called like the Lure of the Triangle, like it's like a Bermuda Triangle movie, but the poster is like a woman in a triangular bikini bottoms, but the ship is sailing into her bikini, and I was like, this is like I wish that movie was real.
Everything about their studio and the running bit of the screams, Travolta will just be like running through, and he's like, I've got this really important thing that I have to do for this, unfolding conspiracy, and the director's like, wait, come watch this or listen to this scream. And especially the one that really gets me is the two women in the booth, and they are trading places and pulling each other's hair, trying to accomplish this scream. And it's ridiculous every time.
Well, it's also how like performative, the movie magic, which is really the craft that's an effort and sweat that you do to make a movie, that how fake it is. And, like certainly sound, the fidelity to sound gets manipulated to things where, that's what Darth Vader sounds like. You mix like 3 different sounds and you kind of get his voice. One thing too that I noticed was that this is more in line with a Hitchcock story in that its MacGuffin just kind of sets things in motion. And there is a MacGuffin in this film. The MacGuffin is the director, our sleazy director, Sam, is pissed that it's the same old wind sounds in the film. So that is the thing that Jack Terry, the gallant knight, I like to think of him as a knight in a way, a failed knight. He failed in his quest, but he goes out to get wind, and that leads him on this journey of conspiracies and things like that. And it also feels like this is a director, even though he's a sleazy director, he still is an artist who wants some better wind sounds for his film.
Apparently, De Palma actually had the same request for his Foley artist
Yeah.
at one, and so that kind of go get some more wind, stuck in his head, and
Yeah.
made it into the movie.
And I think too, like there are like kind of films have like library vault film sounds, and then there's special effects sounds that they manipulate. But just basically like the sound of horse hooves or the sound of people walking down a street. Those are often ones that are custom made for a film, or should be custom made for a film, where there's somebody on a soundstage that's like, I've seen videos as one Foley artist, and he's a guy and he's got these big red heels and he's click clacking them to get the click clack sounds and things like that.
It's good stuff.
It's really fascinating. And I think our colleague, Professor Walter Squire, the one thing he always says, like, when you get emotional in a film, listen to the sound. And I think sound is the great thing that we underestimate in filmmaking, obviously, because we think of it as a visual medium, but it's also an audio medium.
Mm-hmm.
Travolta has a great line where he's presenting, like, I recorded the gunshot, and the police are like, it might be an echo, and he says, I know what an echo sounds like. I'm a sound man.
Oh,
It's got a real what's his name? He's a Michael Mann quality to it. He is a professional who is very competent at his job in this conspiracy world. So,
do you guys like John Travolta?
I don't know that I necessarily have a strong opinion on him. I think he's decent in this movie. I like him as forgetting the name of the mother in Hairspray.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, he's
the one
great.
the character originally played by Divine.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and the musical edition of Hairspray.
I can't remember what that name is.
Mama, welcome to the '60s. But yeah, I don't know that I have necessarily a strong opinion about.
I think when I was watching
Also-
this movie this time, for the first time in my life, I was able to think the complete thought, I don't like John Travolta as a movie star. And I just
Yeah.
think I was watching the movie, I was like, I think this is disconnecting from the movie, as I don't like him as a movie star.
Yeah.
And in this movie, it wasn't he was doing anything bad, or like, it was like a fine performance. And I was just like looking at him, and I was just like, I just don't like this movie star.
Yeah.
I think if this was a different movie star, I'd like this movie more.
Mm.
I don't know why I'm so personally put off by John Travolta. I think because when I was a kid, he was presented as a returning important movie star, but then that kind of didn't go the way everyone thought it would.
It went good for a good 5 years. I mean, he was back.
Please buy
Yeah.
into this type. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was just thinking through John Travolta movies, and I was like, do I like any of his movies? And I was like, Saturday Night Fever is not my thing. I don't like Pulp Fiction that much.
Mm.
Like, I mean, I like it, but I think the parts I like about it aren't John Travolta.
Oh, right.
And then I can think of another thing I liked him in.
I like John Travolta. He's not my favorite actor, but I think one of the things that I found appealing, particularly about his early career, was that his knack for playing main characters who were basically jerks. And in Grease, he's a jerk. In Saturday Night Fever, he's just a kind of you're not an evil person, but kind of a terrible person, kind of self-absorbed, selfish. But there is a certain streak of morality in them. And I think in this particular film, it's really one where he plays, I think it's one of his early films and most where he just plays kind of an out and out good guy in it. But it's in that 70s way that he is like, he's just a guy. He's just a dude. He's pulled into this conspiracy and he's in over his head and he's trying to figure out how to do the right thing, get the truth out, seek justice. And in that fever, he ends up getting this woman killed. And then, of course, he avenges her, but there's something that's just so supremely unsatisfying about his failure. So it's like, a death of an American dream or whatever, because he's this kind of, his character is very, like, he seems very cynical, but he was in the army. He loved working with gear and gadgets, and he ended up being, trying to work, was a sound guy for like internal affairs and police corruption, which is like, if you work in internal affairs, everyone in the police force is going to hate you because you're trying to do the right thing. So he's doing these things that obviously are to do good things, to do right things, but things that alienate them from everybody else. So I like that aspect of him. He's very determined, but also there's consequences for trying to seek the truth, which in the end, the bad people get away with these mysterious, the bigwigs get away. Like Burke, as played by John Lithgow, wonderfully played. He gets killed, but the conspiracists, they get away because all the henchmen and side, kind of muscle is dead by the end of the film.
I liked John Travolta's clothes in this movie a lot.
There is a scene where he's wearing a very similar red that he did when in the opening of Saturday Night Fever, where he's walking, but he's not strutting. He's walking with purpose because this is a ever increasing tension riddled plot. So he's not strutting down it.
Some really nice corduroys in this movie. I got real jealous of. He has a nice corduroy jacket I really coveted, and some good corduroy pants that the cut of which wouldn't look right on me. But
looks good.
I really admired his clothes. In this
costuming is really good. I like the costuming a lot, and particularly like that coat that Nancy Allen is wearing with the fur trim, and then the production design generally. I'm like thinking about the motel that he takes her to, and I mean how like ridiculous that scene is in many ways, but also just the look of that motel with the red neon, and then everything is these like crisscross red, white, and blue pattern, and it's just like the whole film is just like slathered in.
The sets are, there's I forget if it's whose apartment. I think it's his apartment has this great loft. And it's like so like it was just you could tell it was like the scenes were designed to take place on the multiple levels just to have fun moving the camera around in that loft.
Truly.
And like they use all the sets really well.
Like
the train station I think is really coolly presented with like the walking through the train station sequences and stuff like that. They find that cool like construction site with the backward strangulation tumbling down the giant dirt hill like from the busy street to nowhere in Philadelphia.
There's just some like plywood separating civilization to this utter wasteland.
And like parked right up at the top of that kind of downward tumble are the two concrete mixers, and they're both like red, white, and blue stripes too. It's like it's just everywhere. It's
I had at some point I was trying to convince myself this was a bicentennial movie, but it's not. It's just
Liberty
a Philadelphia Liberty Bell movie. So everything's red, white, and blue, and pro America. Like there's this like the climax takes place during the Liberty Bell parade.
Which is the Liberty Day is like a fictional holiday. You know, it's like it's like based on the Mummers parade, but it's this kind of sometimes set in like late fall or early winter with people wearing long sleeves. Definitely not the summer, or not 4th of July, but this like kind of fictional holiday that he's created. And that wonderful parade sequence.
Oh yeah. He drives a Bronco through that that town hall that the Liberty Bell's
so
in.
Good,
and also the steps, I believe the steps up to where Rocky
Market
steps.
Street.
You see that there as well.
John Lithgow I thought was so good in this movie. I think he's a very underrated bad guy. I thought he was so scary and cool and interesting. There's this great moment where he's like on the phone with his the guy who hired him, and he's like, I can't remember the exact literal, but it's basically like, I'm going to keep killing people until no one knows about our conspiracy. And the other guy on the phone is like, what are you talking about? Please stop.
Who are you?
I don't know you.
And he's like, no, it'll be completely operationally secure, and hangs up. And there's such a scary guy where he's like been hired to do what he was never supposed to kill anyone. But
he mentions that he like suggested it once, and the other guy on the other end of the line is like, "Yeah, we shot that down for a reason." Like,
you're
not killing anyone.
Such a scary idea in the movie where he's hired this man, and he's like, and then of course I'll kill like 6 or 8 people, and he's like, no one. It's just we just need like
0.
some photographs, and he's like, yeah, but I'll kill everyone who gets in the way. And it's like a scary idea, and he has that cool weapon, the
garrote,
the garrote with on the watch bezel, so it's always hidden until he slowly pulls it out.
Good stuff. When he is doing, I guess, the second kill of the movie, and he's like in the train station, and we have that woman who's like giving the blowjob to the sailor, and she's on like one end of these like phone booths, and he's on the far end, and the sailor gets out, and she looks through all of them, and he's kind of like, hey, he gives this like big grin, and it's so goofy, but it's like it's part of what I find like really scary about him as his it's kind of like on and off like performance of a real person with a soul moving around the streets, and then he just switches it off.
Yeah.
I would love to see. I always keep seeing these videos about like they ask psychologists who is the most accurate sociopath in a film. I don't know if they've ever done this one, but I feel like this one has to be up there because his like he makes mistakes and then he improvises solutions to his mistakes. So he accidentally kills someone who he thinks is Sally, played by Nancy Allen, and then he's like, I need to create a serial killer situation to distract people from the other killing I did of the governor. So it's like, that's really clever. And then I'm like, oh no, am I as sick as a sociopath for kind of agreeing with this guy and his demented plans?
It's a great moment in the film when he does that too, because he's turned her over and sees that it's not Nancy Allen, and you see kind of like on his face that he's going through let me think about how to do this. And you have a lot of these like split diopter shots where De Palma is intentionally having something in the foreground and then the far background both in focus at the same time.
Almost any moment where a character realizes something is a dioptic shot where it's like you see their face in extreme close-up and the thing they're realizing in the background. And it's over and over and over. It must be the most of all time.
There's something like 15 in this film, but for this moment where he's like hatching this plan, it's De Palma, they're pulling focus. And so, you have him in the foreground, and then he looks to the billboard that is like on the kind of
Liberty Bell.
building. And he sees that the parade, and he's kind of making and then you rack focus back to him, and then they do it again. And so it's this back and forth, and really just like asking the viewer to like, okay, you put all these dots together along with him. Like, how's he going to get out of this situation? And then he does, I guess, the stab in the shape of the bell. It's a great little moment there.
It is the thing. This is the thing about this movie is that it is a great sequence.
Yeah.
A fantastic visual sequence, so cool and slick. The story it's telling is so muddled as to be almost nonsense. Like,
truly,
he has murdered the wrong woman. So the internal decision he makes is, I'm going to fake a citywide serial killer who kills lots of women,
right?
Because that's going to get me out of this one murder that I committed. And then he explains that about 25 minutes later, I think. It's like, how am I supposed to keep up with this?
When I rewatched the movie to discuss this, it wasn't something that I had realized the first time that I watched. But the scene where you have Sally coming up to Manny's apartment, and she's in that coat with the fur trim, and he's wearing this like wife beater tank top, and he's got like stains, and I think he even tries to like wash them out.
The ugliest mustard stain thing.
Yes,
it's the only thing he wears in the movie.
It's disgusting.
He's even slobbier than the previous scene so he's gotten worse.
Yeah. And so they're in these like very distinctive outfits. She comes up, and he's even like rehearsing what he's going to say to her, because he knows it's not going to be a good conversation because he left her for dead. But this is right after Lithgow's character has stabbed this other woman. And so we have part of this conversation, and then we cut to Travolta, Jack, and he's kind of doing his thing, making sure that the audio is synced with the pictures that have come out in this magazine that he has like put together, and he's like making the film. And then he, takes that to the police, and then we get, another phone call with Lithgow, and we get all this other stuff, and then we cut back into like almost a day later is what the film is like asking us to understand the chronology to be. We cut back into that conversation, and it's the same conversation because they're wearing the exact same, that coat and that wife beater. And then that's when she steals the tapes, and then that's like 30 minutes later in the film. I find that to be such a strange editing decision, because it's not like novel, the idea of like a flash forward, but it's so not telegraphed to the viewer, like, we're going to show you something that's happening in the future and then come back, that I was thinking like maybe this is a decision like we want to see a kill earlier in the movie. I don't know.
I do just get the feeling in this movie that does it look cool is such a higher consideration than is this telling the story legibly?
Yeah, absolutely. What emotional effect is this going to have? Yeah. What is the visual priority here?
Yeah. The sequence I think about is right at the very beginning, where I think it sets the philosophy for the movie, where it's giving an important elements of backstory about the political candidates that are in competition, one of whom is about to be murdered. And it's just like the most boring way to as a newscast, like that someone is listening to in the background, like something I would tell anyone, rewrite this scene so that it like presents this in a more dramatized way. But it's just like a newscaster lady being like, these are the facts, the expository facts you must understand about the movie as it's beginning. But then De Palma is like doing backflips with split screen editing because he's simultaneously presenting the boring newscast and John Travolta he's cutting sound effects from a sound library, and it's this awesome split screen presentation of the two like sequences simultaneously, and it's visually very cool and interesting, experimental. And then like it is like interesting too, and that because it's constantly pushing you back and forth your attention between the sound that he's creating with his business with the sound effects library and the newscast. So it's even like kind of fun and cool, but at the same time it's just, this is not interesting. Like it's like watching someone do cartwheels for no purpose.
It's really, really complicated, and he has like so much to push at the beginning of the movie if you want to like actually understand, because he spent the first 10 minutes of the movie doing
a fake movie.
A fake movie. So now he's got a
fake production.
So before the 25-minute mark, we gotta pump all this exposition, and we've already lost 10 minutes. It's a fascinating move.
I mean, I do think it is. Again, it's a parody of, and it's the thing that you could just say it's satire all the time, Cody. But I do think he's making fun of expositional scenes. There's even a part. There's a part later when the TV's on and the assumed serial killer is out, and there's literally a right before he turns the TV off there's like, and now we have a criminologist here to talk about the patterns of this murder, and he turns it off because we know the patterns of the murder. We don't need to hear that. I'm not going to give you that level of irony about this. So I think. And I think it's always that pesky thing of exposition, how much exposition, and I certainly think that Brian De Palma is not Michael Bay, who's like, if it looks cool, let's shoot it. He's not that extreme, but I could see why somebody like him would see somebody like De Palma and be like, I can take this to another couple of levels above that. But one of the really good, sometimes it's good. You see a scene like when the camera, when Jack is in John Travolta is in his sound office in where his workroom, and the camera starts spinning around.
Oh yeah.
And you suddenly realize that, and I think this is kind of like we move into the unreal here, and the surreal, is that all of his sound stuff is erased. And like I'm just like, that's up there with like Amy burning Joe's novel in Little Women. Like that is that man's work. He spent all this time doing this, and you just, even if you hate the guy, don't destroy his life's work at that point. And you don't really understand what's going on because he's just throwing stuff around until he explains somebody erased all of my sound recordings.
Yeah.
And it is a very personal attack. And did Burke? I feel like Burke seems like the one that did it, but that's a long time to be sitting there and individually erasing all of these tapes to make to invalidate you, to make you paranoid, to destroy the work that you have done.
Yeah,
that spinning sequence I thought was so cool. And when I was watching it, I was thinking, okay, I can see that this is the guy that makes Scarface in a few years.
Yeah.
Like he was like discovering this technique of like this extremism in the presentation of like story and staging and like what you can do with the camera. And I felt like this movie had all of those like extreme film form elements from Scarface, but it didn't have like the energy of like that central performance that. And when he married that with like just dial Pacino up to 15 and then I'll shoot it so crazy. I was like, that's when this style became like, oh yeah, and like an indelible movie.
It also reminds me of the end of Coppola's Conversation, where the camera is kind of set pretty high in the room, and it's Call's character realizing that someone has like planted a bug in his apartment. And so it's kind of like the inverse of that moment where, someone has been here and they've taken something from me. It's someone's been here and they've like put something here and I don't know where it is. And that his camera is just kind of, it's not doing the full spin that De Palma has, but it's just kind of like roving back and forth, in and out of seeing people and just like giving you the whole space and that feeling like someone's been here. It's just nasty feeling.
And I think the film also, along with that spinning shot, it does a really good job of getting us into the protagonist's point of view. We see when Travolta goes out to the Jack Terry character goes out to record, we see this visual, like he points his sound mic to something and you see the thing that he's looking at, the frog, the people, the owl right next to him. But when he reviews it, you see it specifically from his point of view. You're seeing it from his eyes at that moment. So I think that's a nice, there's a great sense of subjectivity that gets introduced in the film, which I think there's also like POV shots, but also embodying the emotional state of the character, which, I think when we get to Scarface, you get into the mind of someone who is sick and demented and power hungry as Tony Montana. So.
Yeah. I think one thing we've like not talked about is like the degree to which this movie is based on Antonioni's Blowout. This is a movie I haven't watched Blow Up in like 20 years. But when I was watching this movie, I was like, oh yeah, it's such a duh idea. I'll do the sound design version of Blow Up. The plot of Blow Up, if I'm not misspeaking, is it's essentially this movie, but a photographer catches evidence of a murder by accident while making, I think, still images.
Yeah, he's taking photos in a park.
Yeah, and then the photos are the murder evidence, and the conspiracy is broad and vast, and it's all about the media that he has and how it's and moving around the image and things like that. Very, very, very similar to this movie.
Not as narratively tied, I will say. It's much more associative and like metaphorical. Like famously, the film ends with he's kind of like, everyone got away and the mimes drive in and play tennis and he watches it, and that's how the film ends. And there's a really cool scene where he goes into a club and the Yardbirds are playing with Jimmy Page when Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck were both in that band. So some really awesome guitar solos in that. But yeah, that one's much more, I guess it was kind of in between kind of like these kind of 60s more experimental films and these more kind of cynical, paranoid, a little more plot oriented. And then by the time you get to the 80s, there's like, we want a lot more plot because we want to have a snappy story. So you can see how Blowout is kind of a blending of something that would be more in the 80s to something that would be more experimental, like Blow Up. So.
Yeah. And I did think it was interesting to think about like De Palma, that was like his energy was bringing like these Italian ideas into these American, new American cinemas, like these Italian giallo movies and things like that are really cool, and he's like borrowing elements and ideas from those. So I thought I was just like, oh yeah, this is the sound design version of Blow. And maybe what if there were more, like if there's like you can do like the production design version of Blowout, like, you can do, like the production designer solving the murder mystery. Like, that's the wrong couch.
There's someone encased in some sort of prop that's been murdered or something.
It's a great idea for a movie. Just like get to nerd out about process while you also like kind of spin if you're doing something like De Palma here, like a little bit of a tighter plot.
And I also did like this movie is very, very much about filmmaking. So much, it's the plot of the movie, and the movie. When you're watching the movie, you're supposed to be thinking about filmmaking on like three different levels, including this. I'm watching a movie that's very presentationally making a film. I'm watching them make a film in the movie. I'm also thinking about how filmmaking tells stories. It's like just a movie where filmmaking is the most important thing or idea. And I do love the idea of like, I've solved the murder. Please watch my short film where I present the car crash. Like, I've cut it together. I've done the sound design. Let's fire up the projector. And at the end of the 5-minute presentation, we'll all know the solution to the murder.
But I do think it is a step. So there's a lot of Hitchcock films where the occupation of the main character is superfluous to the plot. I think Robert Donat in the 39 Steps, he's a cattle rancher from Canada. Whatever Cary Grant plays, if he's just like North by Northwest, he's just a businessman. So there's nothing that's like, how do I use my acumen and my MBA and my business skills to stop this great conspiracy and myself from dying? Where you have a sound man who has knowledge and competency in sound design and recording sound that he actually uses to help him. So there's at least that integration of profession and character in it.
Yeah. I did think I felt like the movie betrayed itself a little bit when in the middle it all of a sudden decides to give him the undercover cop backstory, where it's like, I was not just a sound designer, I also worked for internal affairs. I was like, no, this needed to stay purely in the sound editing room. Like, I'm a sound editor, that's how I'm so smart. I thought that was a fun premise for a movie. But then to be, well, secretly, I'm also a police officer. I was like, who cares?
Yeah, you get that like basically short film in the middle of the movie, and it's literally in the middle of like his conversation in that kind of seedy bar with Nancy Allen's character.
I think it's the direct middle of the movie.
Yeah. And you just like go into,
here's another movie,
right.
a different movie
The
where I'm a
third total
different
movie.
I might as well be a different guy.
Yeah.
Like, it has no relation to what's happening. It's just my personal history, and I did like the idea. Like, it has. There's another thing where it has like a great idea in it where you have the wiretap guy and the batteries. His sweat leaks on the batteries and starts burning his belly. It was like a great like premise for like, oh, I gotta save my rat and all that.
Yeah.
And this movie is kind of obsessed with that, where it will cut at key moments in the movie where I feel like I'm supposed to be connecting more to the A plot. It'll be like, here's a whole different plot to look at. Like, spreading the 90-minute mark, which is like when this movie is turning towards the climax, there is a 10-minute unrelated murder sequence in the train station where it's like, why is this moment at this position in the film? It's supposed to be tipping us. We're supposed to be at our most connected to the story. And it's just like, hold on, John Lithgow's going to kill this woman. Hold on. And we watch it play out very methodically for 10 minutes.
So long.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's
but
great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Like, as like as a murder sequence, it's amazing.
Yep.
And you are watching like, oh, you're invested in it.
Yep.
Oh, there's a person I've never met or mentioned in the movie, has nothing to do with anything, but I want to see if she can survive this. And oh no, she can't. Jonathan Lithgow murdered her as a very tangentially related to the plot reason.
Right. But you need all 10 minutes to make sure that
So it has all these weird storytelling decisions like that. Like, let's cut away to essentially just a short film.
Yeah.
Like, let's just show a short, like, and we'll say that's part of the movie.
It's crazy. One of the interesting things that when I was doing research about the film is like someone stole, it was when I guess they were already editing and they were transporting some of the negatives from New York to LA. Someone stole 10 boxes of the original negatives, so they had to reshoot I think like the whole parade scene.
Oh, really?
And something else, but when I think about like something like the tangent, or tangential nature of some of these like mini movies that are happening within the movie, you almost want to say, oh, maybe that's where they had some footage stolen and they needed to like film something else. But no, it's just like this was like built into the DNA of the plot here. Yeah.
It has a very unusual screen story, and I think it's such an unusual melding of a screen story that I think is like kind of like loose and like not all together with the most precise direction you've ever seen in your entire life. That it gives the movie this weird feel where you're like,
off kilter.
Like the edit is so locked in, but what's happening is difficult to decipher.
Yeah, they had Paul Hirsch was the editor of this. He's rather famous. He was one of the editors who, depending on which editor claims what they did, he was the one that actually edited most of the Star Wars films. That's who actually edited Star Wars is a really good question, or what scenes and things like that. But Paul Hirsch, legendary editor. Vilmos Zsigmond was the cinematographer, Academy Award-winning cinematographer. He also was the cinematographer for Steven Spielberg's first film, Sugarland Express. And then Len Stallmaster was the casting director. He was a legendary casting. So it's like they had some just really award-winning, critically acclaimed masters in their particular areas to make this film. So, but yeah, it seems like it is pristinely shot and directed and organized. So, but yeah. But then again, the perversion has to take over. The perversion and the horniness has to take over. So I do think one of the things that just visually I noticed throughout the film is you see the face of Benjamin Franklin looking over, and there's a lot of shots of Benjamin Franklin in signs and things like that. I'm like, genuine genius, one of the fathers of our country. Also, one of the holds up more. He never owned human beings. So one of those like ones that are still like, oh, it's okay to like that one. But also known pervert.
Yeah, world class pervert.
Just really like he wrote an essay about the joys of farting and why older women are better to have intercourse with. But so it is like this excellently crafted film with a perverted underpinnings to it. And again, I think it's like it's one thing also like Burke is the killer. He not only chokes them, but he stabs them. It's like, okay. Usually Hitchcock will pick one or the other, but he's like, I'm going to do both in this case.
Double whammy.
Yeah.
You mentioned Ben Franklin. I always think of the charts that he would make where he would, kind of give himself like X's if he, had lied or, lusted or done whatever for the week. So he was like tracking his morality. Just like an odd guy. I think like one of the things that interests me, kind of going back to this idea of like Travolta's character as the kind of he's seeking out the rats, doing that work, like finding people in the police department that are crooked. And like that becomes like a central part of his like morality as you go on through the film, but that's not something you really learn until later. And I really like at the beginning of the film when he's in the hospital, and he's just kind of rescued Nancy Allen's character from the water, where he seems to be just concerned by being told you should forget this because he doesn't want the government to crush the little guy. And I think that is like really compelling, just this guy who, is not necessarily, he works in, sleazy films and, but he is still concerned with that's kind of his moral center is like, I'm looking out for the little guy. But then it kind of evolves into also this like, also, I used to do this other thing, so it's a strange like evolution as the movie progresses. But yeah, I don't know, it's cool.
I mean, I think he becomes more and more traditionally heroic, and that desire to get the truth is actually, in most cases, people who try to do right, try to be the gallant knight, they come up short, and he, I mean, with that, he, I believe it was Francesco or whatever, whoever was the Sonny or whatever, the snitch, the undercover guy, that he puts that informant in danger, and he puts Sally in danger, and so that I do think, as tacked on as it seems, there is that parallel of that he's done the thing that he regretted most doing. He ends up doing that exact same thing, and to somebody he cares about.
Yeah, and I think that's like key to that bleak ending is set up that he can he can redo it. Like he gets a second chance at saving the informant, but he fails, and then he's tortured by it, and then it becomes a slasher movie. It's so weird. It's such a weird idea.
So, Sam, it's a great scream. And he's like, it's a good scream. Yeah.
I love the moments where he is running towards her and like trying to reach her in time. I do. Yeah. There is that, parallel of like, he can actually redo it and like save her this time. It makes me feel crazy though. 'Cause like, why would you do the same thing? Why would you not just like go in with her? But when he's running to try to save her and it's just like, a little bit in slow motion, it's not super slow, but it just like the trauma. Yeah. It's really effective.
When that sequence too, I think that's like the climax of this movie's obsession with tricking you, like misdirecting you. There's a couple of sequences that work that way, where it's showing you something and then revealing to you at the end of the sequence it's not true. And that sequence is all about setting up for the idea that he's going to make it in time and stop the killer, which he appears to do. And then the cuts reveals that he's too late. And it's like it withholds that visual information, then cut, and it deflates you. And the movie does that in a couple of sequences. The other one is when Jonathan Lithgow first tries to murder Nancy Allen, but he's got the wrong woman. The movie withholds that information from you, and then he tricks her, he stumbles down the mountain, and then it cuts to a face of a different woman, and he realizes it's the wrong woman, and then it cuts from there to Nancy Allen in a different scene, in a different place, like completely safe. And this whole, I just had this obsession with like, I'm going to use the edit to disguise a key piece of information and trick you. A very tricky movie.
One of my students, that scene where they tumble down the construction, that hillside, I guess he had paused the movie because he was like, did she really just die? And Googled, like, does she die at the beginning of this movie? And then so then he had,
wait a minute.
Unfortunately had it ruined that, she does die in the end of the movie. But yeah, it's, it really wants you to believe at that moment that,
yeah. And like, I can't remember the other instances of this, but there's lots of tricks.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways it's a film where maybe a slightly more subtle film would be like, you're telling me a good story where this is like, I'm very overtly manipulating you.
Yeah.
And you may like it or you may not, but I want to make you aware of how much I'm manipulating.
A movie that, like, one of those movies that like wants you to think about the edit. Like, oh, they presented these shots in this sequence to trick me. It wants you to sit in your seat. A movie like, it's a clever movie, and it wants you to be impressed by its cleverness a lot.
Yeah. It's just showing off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A very show-offy movie.
Yeah, certainly.
And I don't necessarily think like De Palma is like, he doesn't really make a heartfelt movie, and that any character in his films, you kind of more respect and understand than necessarily like, I love that character. Maybe not Sean Connery in The Untouchables as Malone, like talk about a sad death. But for the most part, they're it's a very clinical kind of character presentation in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So any other last thoughts you all might have? It's been a wonderful discussion, not to self-congratulate ourselves, but y'all have a lot of good things to say, and I've enjoyed talking with y'all about it.
Yeah, I have not met a lot of people who have seen this movie, and so it was fun to have my students watch it, and it was wonderful to talk about it with other people who like this movie. I've thought about it
did they
for a
respond
couple
to it? Did they
years.
find it cool?
I think they liked it better than the conversation.
Oh, did you watch them both?
Yeah, we watched both.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. I think this one is like more exciting than the conversation, but I like the conversation a little bit more. To your point earlier, but yeah, no, I agree. This has been cool.
We get paranoid middle-aged Gene Hackman. I think would appeal. They get a little older, like, okay, I understand this guy, and more like younger, youthful John Travolta running around trying to figure things out. That feels a little more It's an adult film, but it's for a younger I think a younger person might connect a little bit better with that one. So.
I feel like when the credits came up on this one, and I'd put myself in the headspace where my main question is, what's the complete emotional effect of this story, and how does that connect with its like box office performance and its like place in movie history? I think I completely understood why film critics in 1981 were high on this movie. Like, I think it is an exciting movie to write about. It's like a very show-offy movie, and a movie that I think, particularly, I think sometimes maybe De Palma might be one of those guys who's hard to watch because you've been watching an entire generation rip off De Palma. So like when you're watching his movies, you're like, this doesn't feel, but where I think if I were 1981, this would feel so fresh and like it's like nothing you'd ever seen before. Right. And then I could also understand why box office, like the American public didn't show up for it. Like, it's a weird movie. It is dark at the ending, but like the American populace will accept a dark ending under certain circumstances, but this is not one. It's more like a weird feeling that you have, than like a bleak feeling.
Yeah.
You go back to the perversion at the end,
Yeah.
but infused with like all the dramatic stakes of, what you've.
I could see a million points in the story where like anybody could be like, I'm done. I don't understand this movie. I'm leaving. It's a more complicated movie than maybe I was prepared to confront. Like, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's one of those films. I'm emotionally connected to a fair amount of things, but then again, I like really dark stuff. But it is like a film you can respect a lot, if not necessarily love.
Mm-hmm.
It feels kind of one of those kind of films. So
it is interesting.
Yeah. And, it's one of the things like I wish, and again, I not to talk about the good old days, but I feel like I want more films like this that at least on a technical level tries stuff.
Yeah,
Certainly, yeah.
And a lot of it is very cookie cutter. At some point, this has got to break, right? We need to save cinema, and just people need to do more weird stuff. And I think this is a good film for anyone who loves film to look at, whether you like it or not, or that looks at how does somebody go about a different way to tell a kind of story through sound. I mean, it's very like a very maybe not so much a filmmaker's film, but a film studies film, film studies student film, I think, certainly. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you again for watching, and thank to our guest Harrison and obviously Ian. I'm Cody Lumpkin, and make sure to like, subscribe, and share. All right.